You're listening to the Clean Comedy Podcast with your host, James Creviston.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Clean Comedy Podcast. It's James, and today I have a great guest for you guys. Now, this guy caught my eye because he writes a lot of books. Now, if you know anything about me, I love writing. It's how I make a lot of my money outside of stand-up. I write stuff. But this guy writes so much, right? He's the founder of the Outliers, a Second City trained comedian. He's an ASU graduate. He has an MBA from Keller. He's the author of 43 books, guys. 43 books. And not just like in stand-up, like there's a ton of them. The Ravish Hotel, the Bail Bondsman, and Jaime Bathos. And his current works include AZ Essay 1 through 4, a collection of essays. I'm not going to try to pronounce that one, Phoenix something. And that's word is too big for me. He'll have to correct me there. But he produces the annual stand-up festival and Arizona Improv Festival, Arizona Sketch Festival. Like I said, he's a graduate from Second City, Chicago, IO Chicago, the Annoyance. He teaches stand-up, improv, sketch comedy, essay, short story, and screenwriting. And his favorite thing to do is seeing his students headline at the Tempe Improv. Please give it up for Mr. Dave Thurston. Dave, welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Dude, you got a stellar list, man. I was looking at everybody that's on here. Craig Shoemaker, Darren Carter. You got Steve North on here. So I'm flattered. Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
I always like to learn from people. The whole point of the podcast is just to like learn. And you're one of those people I could tell also likes to learn and also likes to step out of their comfort zone and try to grow. And for me, when I got your book, A Way to Write an Hour of Stand-Up every year, I was like, dude, this is something nobody's talking about, right? Because we're always told as comedians, write that 5 minutes, then write the next 5 minutes, then write the next 5 minutes, right? It's always like 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. But I tour with Craig, right? I open for him. He does 90-minute shows. Like, that's unheard of. When people hear that, they go, wait, he's headlining and he does 90 minutes. I'm like, yeah, because most headliners do like 45, maybe an hour, maybe a little more than an hour. But 90 minutes is insane, you know?
Yeah, no, it's nuts though. But if you break the math down, it's not that bad. If you can do, 5 minutes a month of good minutes, not just like here's 5 minutes, maybe there's a line or two in there, but I mean, 5 minutes of A material at the end of the year, after 12 months, you got an hour.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's all I really do is like try to focus things. There's really only 4 things I can do because like people say like, oh, you teach comedy, but you don't really need to teach comedy. Like people that love doing it are going to do it. You can't stop them, so you don't really need to like teach, but you can facilitate. You can like offer structure. You can provide opportunities, and one of the most important things you can do is just take care of people emotionally and support them, and they have a rough show, it's not going well. You can say, hey, that audience was wrong. You know what? You were great. You got to keep going. You got, here's your next show, and work them through, help them through that emotionally so that it's just easier for them next time. I want it to be easier for everybody than it was for me, trying to make it so that the obstacles that I had to overcome maybe aren't so hard for them, or maybe they don't have them at all, and just like speed up that process. I mean, 5 years, you hear sometimes people spend just to get like their first 5 minutes, like that's so hard, There's got to be an easier way. There's got to be a structure that you can offer. So, I wrote a lot about this, and some of it is helpful to a lot of people, got a lot of positive feedback. But the reality is, like, this is my struggle. This is my, opportunity to figure this out for myself. Like, this is my battle. And I'm like, oh, this helped. This worked. All right, let's share this. All right, this helped. It's worked. Share this with as many people as you can. So it's my struggle, but I don't want to sit here and go like, hey, I know how to do everything. Like, this is my journey, and I'm just sharing it with some folks that have been so nice and so polite. Like, I got a review on Amazon the other day. They said like Dave's 50 pages is, really helpful. If you want to read the best 200 pages on comedy, read those 50 pages 4 times. Like, what a kind thing to say, from somebody that, it just made their struggle a little bit lighter. So
you are a comedian yourself. You graduated from ASU. What was your major at ASU? What was your
History and English. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we are brothers, dude. I think we're brothers from other mothers. I went to UNLV, so another desert college, guys. History degree, history and bachelor's and master's. And when I was finishing my master's, my professor said, "What do you want to do with this?" And I said, "Oh, I want to be a history professor." And he literally was about to break down in emotional tears and said, "Do not do that. You will make more money doing something else." He's like, "I'll write you letters to go to law school and business school. So apply to those." I applied. It was right at the housing crash 2008. So more people applied to law school and business school than ever before. So even with a pretty decent LSAT score, I did not get into law school, but I did get into business school. So I ended up getting my MBA as well. So we're very similar in our breed of what we do. And you're a great writer. How many? You've written 43 books just across what's genres? What's just kind of the spectrum that you do?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I've never been asked that question, but I have a great answer for you.
Right.
I try to write in every genre because you never know what might take off. So, I started writing like thrillers. I was like, I'll write this. But then something like Jack Reacher, I love like James Reese in the Terminal List. I love that kind of stuff. So Jaime Bathos is like my guy. But then there's some things that like can't physically happen. It doesn't work. It's science fiction. And I was like, well, instead of just putting that to the side, why don't I make that into a science fiction story? So then I got the Captain Brian series. So I just used all the material that I couldn't use for like a thriller series. I tried to write in the the steamy romance genre, but I can't do it. I couldn't get there. I don't know why, but I write, in every I tried to have fantasy fiction. I did that. It was called the what was it called? The Dragon People. So it's modern day people. It's like people that turn into werewolves, like Teen Wolf, but they turn into dragons, And but it's like a parody. So one of the dragons, instead of shooting fire out their mouth, they fart and it lights on fire. So it's like a jet propelled dragon. So it's just like parody of like fantasy fiction, but like you can never write that in like a thriller, like a Jack Reacher type novel. So I just put that in its own like category. So and so I started out just writing short stories, and then some of those short stories grow into like a full novella and a screenplay. So that's what Phoenix Fiction is. I know it's tough to say, tough to pronounce.
Oh yeah, I was like, I don't know this word. I'm an idiot.
It's Phoenix Fiction. It's my own word. It's spelled with a PH, so it's not right. But that's what that is. It's just like short stories might not go anywhere, but some of those short stories have just grown into like novellas and like series from just like an idea, but one thing led to another. Now it's 3 or 4 books down. So it's a cool little process.
How many short stories are in each volume? Like, what would
15,
you say? Like 15? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I want to do that. I have like a bunch of I write a bunch of like humor writing stuff that I know it's stuff that I know I can never do on stage, right? Because it's just too abstract or weird or silly or whatever. You're like, there's no way to really form this into a bit or a set, but I can write it out and at least get it out of my brain. So it's not just sitting in there. I'm thinking about it. And then I'm like, I should do something with this. So I had an idea to like produce it all as a book as like comedy I can't tell on stage type thing, like just stuff I couldn't tell you on stage, but it's funny and will entertain you, and maybe you can take it home with you when you leave the show or whatever it is. So that gives me hope. That gives me an idea. Like I've had that idea and I was like, how do I make this work? But now the fact that you've done that makes me go, okay, I think I could do something like that. It'd be fun. Because I don't know, maybe you could help. Maybe this is a good question for you. Is someone who wants to write a book, right? A fiction book or a humorous fiction or any kind of fiction, you write that first chapter, you write that first scene, or you write a couple scenes, you go, this is amazing. And then you go, now what, right? You get stuck. With the screenplay, I know the proper beat process structure. I can write a screenplay because I know that format. Like in my brain, it works better. But when I go to write a book or a story, I can't do it. So what's the, you do both, so you can.
I had, an idea, and I wanted to write it down, and it was just about a guy who gets he's like underground in these catacombs, and they got to get to the surface, because they have this message that says, there's safety on the other side. Okay. So, and they're trying to get to the surface. They get to the surface, and there's people on the surface that are trying to get underground because they got a message that says there's safety on the other side, and they meet, and that's all it was. It was like 8 pages. It's not even like really a thing. So I just wrote it as a short story, and it sits for like 2 or 3 years. And then I'm like, well, what would happen if it took me literally 3 years later? I'm like, what if they all get to the surface and then there's like a spaceship that comes and they're like, oh, we finally made it to Earth because we heard there was safety on the other side. And so they all get on the spaceship and they just like take off and they go under the ocean because they're like, well, maybe that's where they're safe, So, but then it ends up being this like elaborate plan that they were all drawn together by somebody who's recruiting these soldiers together. The best of the best are all getting recruited. So, and that ended up being like a full on, like that's a screenplay now.
Wow.
It's one of those things. It's like if I had like a $200 million budget and Chris Pratt wants to be the guy, like, it's like that project. So I got my fingers crossed. I'm ready if anybody wants to produce that, but I want to get like a smaller budget short screen done, but I'm ready. If
that's awesome.
Tarantino calls and says, hey, I need an idea, which is likely to happen. I'm ready. I'm just saying, be ready, be prepared. So that's my long answer to your short question. Like, just get it on paper. You never know how long it could take before you get the next idea that pushes a story forward.
That's a good idea. What I did, somebody said this to me to take, there's a friend of mine that I had, Tarun, on here, Tarun Shetty. He wrote some stuff and then he wrote books and put them on like Amazon or whatever. Then he got noticed. So I was like, oh, what could I do? And I have a screenplay that I wrote, a pilot TV episode about a family that hunts monsters. And the parents have been hunting the monsters forever. It's like if Modern Family met Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So think about that, right? It's very silly. The dad's very silly. The mom's very silly. And so on the 16th birthday, the son is supposed to take over, but they never told him and they never trained him and they haven't done anything. They haven't actually they've kind of just we'll do it. And then one day we'll get him to do it. No big deal, And so they took it on. So then the clock counts down and now they have to tell him and teach him and whatever. And so the family dynamic changes because he has to now go learn to be a monster hunter. And so it's all the silly stuff that happens. So I wrote a pilot. It's really funny. It's very much like, again, Modern Family meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's so silly. People that read it go, this is silly. But I was like, what if I take that pilot and I put the first 2 episodes together as like a novel or a novella where I just take all those scenes and I rewrite it and I put it in a novel. So that's what I'm doing is and then I have 2 episodes written, right? Because I'll have two scripts, and then I'll have a book that's the first 2 episodes that someone can read and know, oh, this is where this show's going. This is what happens here. And if it works and people like it, then I'll keep writing more. Then I can have both sets, and then at some point, maybe place will go, hey, that's a great idea. Do you have screenplays? I'm like, yes, I have all the screenplays and I have all the books, and there you go. Let's do this. So
And I can tell just by the way you're talking about it, you actually write your stuff. Like there's a lot of AI tools out there, but I'm the same way. Like I wrote a lot of books, but like I type out because I love the writing process. Yeah. Like I love the creative process. I love getting stuck in a corner and trying to find your way out. Like it's cool that we have this technology that can help type faster, but like I love just getting lost in the story and trying to figure out where it's going to go, and I miss that. I crave that. It's an experience. Writing is the experience. Let me ask you this though, like writing a book, I feel like I live that story out for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever I write. When I'm writing the screenplay, I feel like I'm on the set of the movie directing the movie. Like, do you feel like
no, I feel like I'm watching the movie, like I'm watching a TV show or whatever. Yeah. I feel like I'm watching whatever's happening and I'm going, oh, this is great. Because I let my characters kind of tell me what they want to say. I don't really go into it I just kind of know who they are. And then I kind of let them act it out. So there's sometimes where like I write a whole scene and I'll go back to it and I'll go, wow, I didn't even think this scene was going to go that way. I'd written when I did the outline, did it a whole different way. But the way the characters were interacting with each other, it made it go a little bit different. And we could still get to the final destination of where we need to get to, but there may be a roundabout way for us to get there. So for me, that's now that's when I'm writing my own stuff. If I'm writing for somebody else, which I do a lot of ghost writing and stuff, I always stick to whatever it is. And I will play with stuff where I'll maybe write something I think is funny or better than what they wanted. And then I've never had a complaint. I've had people go back, wow, you made it better than I thought. And I was like, okay, good. Then if I just go with my natural thought process and what I naturally want to do, it's great. If I resist that, if I go and I stop and I go, you know what? I should lay back or I should back off. That's when I run into issues, right? Because you're second guessing yourself.
You should follow that impulse. Like always follow that impulse, because every successful movie seems to have that story. Like even the story, like if you've ever seen the movies that made us, they do
I love it
on Back to the Future, and like everybody contributed to it. Like in the story evolved, the characters, the actor changed, they had to rewrite it, and it's the process. So if somebody asks you to type out their screenplay, it's your job to make it better. They're hoping that you will make it better, and you're involved in the process, and your responsibility is to improve the product. So always follow that impulse. Like if they come back and they give you notes and like, well, this isn't what it was. It's as simple as just going back and change it. They can do that. They can go back and put it back the way they want it. That's fine, but like you're helping them, and they want you to do that, and they want you to do that without paying you to do that. That's like their secret. But I love doing it, so I would never be like, oh, you owe me money for making this better. Like that's just, it's, you don't want to be that greedy, just be known for helping and making things better, and your goal is to get invited on the next project. So it sounds like that's what you're doing. I mean, and that's exactly what I totally agree with that. So
Craig always calls it a being of service. He always says you just be of service. If you can just be of service, things will happen. So when you're being of service and you're not expecting anything in return, you're not expecting there to be change in your life or money or whatever it is, then you'll be good to go. But if you expect something, then you'll butt up against your expectations and what needs to happen in that moment. And then you'll be frustrated. That's where people find most of their frustration is they go, well, it should have been this way. And it should have done this. And, right. The shoulda, coulda, woulda thing. And so when I do that, I catch myself doing it sometimes around him, and he gives me the look, and I go, all right, my bad. And he's like, because I know I'm like, all right, I know what I'm doing. I'm getting in my head and going, well, it's got to be this way. And you got to do this. You got to do that. And he's like, just go with the flow, dude. Like there's no, when you put pressure on things, that's when bad things happen, right? If you go in with no expectation, you just go, well, let's see how it goes. Let's see what happens. Then you can do it. Now, as a stand-up, your process, you write down all your process stuff. Do you find yourself with something like what I was talking about, where you have a funny idea, but you can't write it for stage, so you use it somewhere else? Is that kind of your process too? Just like keep a catalog of ideas and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I try to write an essay every single day.
Wow.
And so at the end of the week, I've got like 7 essays that I can go back. And sometimes it's, 3 or 4 sentences. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 pages, but it's just an idea, a thought, and then I'll go back and go like, man, there's something there. Sometimes I'll like rewrite an essay, or it's like look at a topic. There's one that like I just can't figure it out. I've written 3 times about it, but there's a salamander. It's called the hellbender. And I'm like, that's the most misnamed animal of all time. It's the salamander. It's called the hellbender. And I've like tried to like find a joke in that, but it's just like such an odd thing that nobody cares about, that I'm like, how do I get people to care about? So, I mean, that's one that just like this process like didn't, where I'm gonna have to find another way to make that funny, and then I had another, like Trump got indicted again, for the 4th time.
It was like 87 indictments or something like that.
Right. Yeah. That may be the title of my next hour. Just indicted.
Yeah.
Maybe the indicted album. But so I was working on I'm like, this is just like there's too much, it's too topical. You can't like deal with this. So, I just wrote to the anxiety that everybody feels, especially Ron DeSantis, like he's got to be like, he's sitting there like, the guy that has a crush on a girl. He's like, you're in this abusive relationship. Just give me a chance. Like, what do you mean? The cops are at your house again. You got to go to court with this guy. Just give me a chance, So that's like 4 or 5 essays. But what really gave me the idea was just talking about it with another student. And he's like, oh yeah, that's kind of like a guy trying to get in a relationship. And I was like, oh yeah, an abusive relationship. And then like the cops and then the courtroom and like all the stuff kind of fell into place. But just sitting there writing by myself didn't really get me anywhere. But talking about it with a friend who's funny, another student who's funny, was like, why don't you try this? And that collaboration is really powerful. I mean, you can sit there and write, but if you can get somebody else that you trust, that you have a good chemistry with, and you can bounce an idea off of, sometimes that'll snap you out of that thing. So maybe I need to call my friend Alejandro back and just be like, hey, what about the hellbender salamander? What do you think? And so I'm not against that, but you're surrounded in this industry by people that are talented and funny and have good ideas, and it's a mistake not to tap into that and try to help them. And one thing that I wrote a lot about was the writer's resistance and performer's resistance. You see that a lot, where you give somebody an idea and they just kind of resist it. They're like, it's not my idea. And then the performer's resistance. You can tell like they loved that joke, they wrote that joke, but then they told the one about the candy cane, and they're like, somebody gave them that. They weren't like married to that. They didn't deliver it with the same passion. You can say. So I always try to like speak to that. I mean, that's in the book, A Way to Write an Hour Every Year. Is just you got to overcome the writer's resistance, that performer's resistance, and accept. It's a skill to accept an idea that somebody's given you. So you can talked about that a little bit in screenplays where you write an idea and they're like, and you kind of get that look. It's like they need to accept your idea. Like that's a skill too. And it's a good skill as a stand-up comic. Like when somebody says like, hey, this is funny, you should do that on stage. You need to have the guts to give that a try, even if it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
So Bill Burr talked about that a lot. Or go ahead, you were going to say something.
I was like, I wonder if that comes from your improv background of saying yes and, because a lot of comedians don't have any of that improv skill. Like I took an improv class and I feel like it helped me a lot more to be able to say yes and to stuff, where a lot of people will automatically go, no, I don't want to do that. Right. That's their default is no, and they shut it down. But and I was guilty of that too. I took improv and I went, okay, let's hear it out. Let's just say yes and see what happens. Right. And that really changed a lot of my mindset. Do you think that that's part of why you have that mindset too, is the improv training and all that stuff like that as well?
Yeah, I spent 20 years saying yes to everything, so, when it did, but I still feel it. Even after 20 years of it, I still feel like, oh, that's not my idea. And people are like, you're crazy. You just said that. What do you mean you won't do it on stage? I'm like, all right. But that's one of the best things you can do is take an improv class, learn to say yes, get around people that are like a healthy community where people just force you to agree and heighten together in that collaboration. If you learn improv first, it makes everything easier. It makes everything way easier. You're learning scene work, you're learning editing, you're learning writing, you're doing it all kind of in one mixture. I mean, it's one of the best things that you can do is learn improv first. Like I encourage everybody to do that.
I think we should be teaching improv to kids in school. I think if we taught them that, if improv was like a course or part of some curriculum, it would change the way that we interact with each other, right? Because we are all taught at a certain age to be more resistant to things, right? To go, oh, you can just say no to that. You can just say no to that. But if we all like started with improv as like a building block of education, of saying yes and working together on those ideas that may seem outlandish or weird or scary or whatever it is, and you just say yes and go with the flow, we would have a overall society would be better, because instead of being like resistant to everybody going no, we would go yes and maybe we do this, and then we go, oh great. It would stop political strife, personal conflict between people. We'd be able to have better conflict management. I think education would go better. I think interpersonal relationships, meeting strangers, just everything societally, if we all took that improv and said, I teach improv to teenagers now, and I teach stand-up to teenagers, and I teach podcasts to teenagers, and I notice that my improv kids in the beginning are the most resistant, and then by the end they're the most open, whereas my stand-up kids are the most open, and by the end start to get a little more resistant because they figured out how to write jokes, and now they think what they do is and I go, whoa, you gotta wind up. So now I've been throwing a little improv into the stand-up class because I see that and I go, hey, you guys need to be open to saying yes and to things too. If someone throws an idea at you, you say yes and try that and see what happens, right? And so I think there's something there. Maybe that's a book that you read, is like how to put improv into education or something like that. Because you have 20 years of experience, it's something that would help phenomenally with interpersonal and personal relationships. And just like, if you think about just the political divide, or the divide we have in America, where like people are just very like, you're this thing, I don't want to be your friend, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to do. You're like, dude, just yes and like, oh, okay, that's your idea, yes, and maybe blah 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 blah, and then you go back and forth, and now there's a dialogue, and now we're talking, and now we're all getting along. But when you do that, it's frustrating. Now, the other question I have for you is about Arizona Stand-Up Festival, Arizona Improv Festival, and Arizona Sketch Festival. Are those annual? Those are annual things you still run, or did COVID? Or talk to me about that a little bit. I'd like to know more.
Yeah. So when COVID hit, we slowed down. I'm still able to push through the Stand-Up Festival every year.
Right.
But the Sketch Festival and the Improv Festival, like we'll get those up and running again. But every year we do the Stand-Up Festival no matter what. But this sketch festival, we brought out like 10 West and put those guys up. So, but it's all the same thing. It's all selling tickets. Like it's a lot of our shows are the same, when the Outliers was really firing on all cylinders, but then you focus everything on sketch comedy and and then we call it the sketch festival and bring in some people from LA, but at the end of the day, we're always going to do stand up, sketch, improv. We're always going to encourage people to write essays, write short stories, and parlay that into a screenplay. So, I try to everything feeds everything else. You know what I mean? So ideas are ideas. And what we want to do is just be an idea machine that creates valuable content that people will engage in, but I think it comes back to what you said. It comes back to just improv, saying yes. And I feel like you remember that Mitch Hedberg joke where he was talking about how he's doing stand up and somebody asked him to write a TV show. And he's like, that's like being a chef. And then somebody comes up and says, hey, can you farm? Nobody told him, like, you should have been writing this whole time. You should have learned how to write a TV show. You should have learned how to structure a screenplay. You should learn how to just tell a story and just have ideas, and get them written down. So when the opportunity comes, you can say yes to that. Yeah, I got a TV show idea. If anybody called, like at any day, if lightning strikes, I'm on the Rogan podcast and they're like, well, we need to do a TV show. We need to do a movie. Like I'm ready. I got them all lined up and ready to go. So, I just need to get my stand up to the level that I want it at, which is the reason it's not is I haven't done enough shows.
Right.
We just need to do, 600 shows in the next 12 years or 12 months, not 12 years. In 12 months, if we can do 500 or 600 shows, like that should be enough. But it's tough. I got a wife, a child, a job, a side hustle, So if I could just clear all that out and just do shows, that would be way easier. So, but I love what I do. And part of the reason I fell into what I do is because I can do this at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I can't do a show at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I'm free. No one's bugging me at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I can get online and I can post, I can write, I can do whatever I need to do. But I think the near future offers so much opportunity. I mean, people can take their career from one level to the very highest level in months. I mean, it used to be like years. Now it's like literally you're seeing within like a couple months, people's careers just taken off.
There's Matt Rife is the big one. And then there was another thing that someone just showed to me yesterday, I believe, of this guy singing a song in his backyard or whatever, Oliver something.
Oliver Anthony.
Dude, okay. You know about this. And like in 5 days, he went from a nobody to literally having a record deal and stuff, bro. Like just this one little short, I think it's like 3-minute song. It's not very long. And I watched it. Somebody showed it to me and I was like, oh, that's a good song. And that's all I thought. I was like, oh, that's a good song. And they're like, no. This dude's got a record deal now. And I'm like, for real? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, it's like in 5 days. I'm like, what is happening?
No, it's awesome though. The market is 8 billion people. Every year there's another, 100 million people online. Yeah. Like it's crazy. You never know, what, you're always like this far from all of it, from the top of the mountain,
Well, it's so many people stop, right? They stop and go, well, it's right. It's up there. I'm never going to make it. So I'll stick with this view. This view's safe. Yeah. I'm here. No big deal. I don't have to climb anymore. I'm good. I'm okay. I'm comfortable. Right. That's where they stop. But the people that end up successful, they're like, all right, well, that's the hard, like, I think the 80-20 rule, right? It's like the 80-20 rule. The 80%, most of us can get to the 80% pretty easy. That last 20% is going, all right, man, this is going to take all 100% for me to get to that 20%. And you just have to push through it. That's what I'm learning now is like, I pushed it about the 80% mark and I'm like, okay, I'm here and I'm looking at that last 20% and it feels gigantic. It feels like, man, I don't know if I could do it, but I'm like, you know what? If I don't do it, what am I going to do? Get 80, be 80 and be like, I wish I would have done it. And then like be mad at myself. No, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. So
no, it's a great perspective. I appreciate that. So that last 20%, that inspires me.
that's the whole point, right? We should be inspiring each other. You inspire me, so it's good. Now the festival, like the stand-up festival stuff, what time of year do you run them? When is like, how can people find out about it? That kind of stuff too, because that sounded interesting to me, by the way.
So the next thing that we're going to do is because I'm teaching a class right now that'll wrap up September 3rd. And then I'll be doing a big push for something I've never done before, which is the Las Vegas Comedy Convention.
Wow.
So it's November 5th, 6th, and 7th, 3 days in Las Vegas. So it's 9 workshops, 3 like mock showcases. You're going to run through a showcase, but it's not going to be like a show. And the idea is to I'm looking for less than 20 people that just want to get started, might have never done anything before, but want to have a solid foundation. And my idea is to take them through the comedy journal. So they're writing every day. They got their monthly goals. They got their way to write an hour of stand-up every year, and we put them on that track, give them that base, give them an improv background. Right. So they start there, and then there's a weekly follow-up meeting and monthly shows, so that a year from now, it's an experiment to see if I can get all of these guys to do an hour of material 1 year from November 5th.
Wow. That's such a cool idea.
Yeah. But it's awesome. So that's where 99% of my energy is going into that. So after November, then we'll push for the stand-up festival. Last year we did it at CB Live up in Scottsdale, northern Scottsdale. Actually, I think that's Phoenix, Desert Ridge area. So we've done it at Tempe Improv. We've done had Brian Kiley out.
Yeah, I love Brian. I got to get him. I got to get him on the podcast. I haven't got him. I've talked to him a few times about it. I haven't got him yet, but I'll get him.
So nice. He's the nicest guy
ever.
You know what? I remember I was still writing the Ravish Hotel, and I had booked him and took him back to the hotel. And I was I didn't get to spend 1 minute with him because it's so busy when you do these things. You're selling tickets, talking to the audience members. One of your comics is having a rough day, and you're walking them through it to make sure they're their best and they have a good show, and you're selling tickets to anybody you can talk to, so it's super busy. So I finally get him back to the hotel, and I'm just exhausted, and I take off, and I get in my truck and I just drive back to the hotel. And I was like, you know what? I finally got a chance to relax. I'm in the lobby, just wanted to have a drink real quick. You don't have to come down, but I just needed to relax, So, and he comes down, and we talked for hour and a half. But we talked about the Ravish Hotel. We talked about everything, just life in general. And what a nice, kind guy. He was so gentle. And I was like, man, no wonder he's so successful in the industry. He's just so nice and kind and genuine. And I was like, man, you hear these stories about people that are just superstars, and they have some rough edges, but that's not true. Those are the exceptions. Most people that are going somewhere, that are doing something, that are really successful, are so nice and kind and genuinely helpful and want the best for people. I was like, these are the kind of people that I want to be around, and that's the kind of person that I want to be. So in that vein, thank you again for just having me out here,
man,
and talking with me for purchasing the drivel that I've put out there.
It's not drivel, man. It's anybody listening, this is not drivel. It's good stuff. Honestly, it's so good, because I think, again, we're there. There's either two camps, right? There's a camp of hold all the secrets back. It's all for me. I had to figure out myself, so you got to figure out yourself, right? There's those camps. And then there's the other camp of, okay, I'm going to give material, but I'm going to give material in a way that benefits me only, right? Where I'm going to tell you, because you got to buy book 1, and then you got to buy book 2, and then you got to take my course, and then you got to do this thing, and then it becomes this pyramid scheme type thing. And it's then there's the middle ground of people like you, or people like my friend Robert G. Lee, who teaches that stuff, or just some people who are willing to give and say, hey, just let me teach you this one thing, or let me show you this one piece that helped me, or this really helped me. And they tell you something, and you go, man, and something clicks for you. But and then there's also, I guess, that other camp of, you can't teach comedy. What are you doing? You're a hack if you try to teach comedy. Those who can't teach, all that stuff. And I'm like, seriously, do you not know anything? If you think, would you go to an art class, a class where we learn to paint, and go, you can't teach people to paint? No, it's the same thing. It's still art skill, and there's still a science to it, right? To colors and strokes and movement and brush technique and all that stuff. Why would you say that about one other thing? If you have a sense of humor, you can learn stand-up comedy. Now, are you going to be Dave Chappelle? Are you going to be Jerry Seinfeld? No, right? It's probably not going to happen. But can you learn to do stand up? Of course. Anybody with a small sense of humor that is willing to take that moment to get on stage, with the scariest thing ever, and try it, can learn stand up comedy. This is the fact.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear, like, do you think anybody can do stand up comedy?
If they have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
If they're and we've all met these people who have no sense of humor whatsoever, and you go, how are you getting through life, dude? Like, you're not laughing at anything. Like, it's
right.
I'm scared right now for you. I'm scared for you. I'm not even scared for me. I'm scared for you because you're not laughing. You're not finding anything funny. We all have had that one coworker where you're like, I'm a little worried about you. Like, you don't laugh. So yes, if you have a sense of humor and you're willing to learn structure of a joke and the format of a joke, you can teach someone stand-up comedy. Now, can you teach them to be a hilarious, amazing comedian? No, that takes work, that takes practice, that takes personal development, all these other steps. But can you teach a person who has a sense of humor to write a joke and tell that joke? Yes, 100%. I mean, if I would love to hear your side of that.
I don't disagree at all. But I do have a few like cases that change my mind.
Okay.
I used to think the same thing. I used to think there's people that can't do it. But I was teaching a class when this is like 2012, 13, early on when I broke out to do my own thing. And I was like, there's a guy who just walked into class and his shoulders are slumped, like his knees are together in his chair. He's just like won't look anybody in the eyes. And I had 3 people come up to me and go, don't work with that guy. Like, you're wasting your time. Like, he can't do it. And, after just being like, I'm just going to be this guy's ultimate cheerleader. Like, no matter what he does, I'm just going to build up his confidence. And there was one day, like, he's bombing. Like, week 1, terrible. Week 3, terrible. Week 6, terrible. And then I was like, hey, we need to maybe get a little music into the show. And I'm not kidding. This guy's hand pops up. Just boom. He's like, oh, I can do it. And everybody was like, what is he on drugs? Like, what is the thing? And he gets up and he starts rapping. And this is like a 6'3" lanky white guy, but he looks like he's got like his hat on sideways. He's got it like, and I'm like, that might actually work. And I was like, let's give it a shot. And he starts, it sounds like Busta Rhymes. It's so fast. It like nobody can keep up. And from that moment, like his confidence went up. And he walked into class the next day and he like sat up and his head was back. Like he was like, and he starts to deliver. And I was like, maybe we should, and I said it, like whispered it under my breath. I'm like, maybe we should put that in the show. And I saw him like sit up and I was like, oh, he wants this. Like, I can help him. If I can get this into the show, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I'm going to try to sneak it in. I'm not going to really tell anybody. I'm not going to make a big deal. We'll just put it in the lineup and then we'll have them kind of sneak in. But I didn't want to put too much of a spotlight on him. I wanted him to just be able to like crack the door open. And if he wants to walk through this, he can go for it. And he stepped up huge and he lights up the room. Like, I've never seen anybody turn like that. And I was just like, oh man. And so I agree with you. Like, there's certain people that don't have like an incline, like a natural sense of humor, but you never know. Like, that's my answer now, is like, you never know what button might turn somebody on or light somebody up. Like, so I'm always looking for that. So I always have hope, but I also know I never push somebody too much.
Yeah.
I'll ask like, hey, you should do this. And if they say no once, I might ask again like a couple weeks later. And if they say no again, I don't push too much, because I've met people that are so funny, unbelievably talented, around the coffee pot at work, like on the phone, when you're just hanging out, hilarious. And I was like, I'm going to make them do the show. I'm going to force it, no matter how long it takes. 8 months later, I finally get them on stage and it didn't go well. And I've just learned not to do that. You can invite people, you can create an opportunity, but I feel like it's a mistake to push somebody too hard.
That makes sense.
You invite them and they come along, you want to give breadcrumbs to kind of help people get along and take small steps. But I've learned if you like push people that really don't want to do it, like you're not helping them.
I like that.
I don't know. Again, long answer to a short.
No. That's good. Those are always good because there's always so many layers and levels to that kind of stuff. So here's the question I ask everybody at the end of every episode. If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you started comedy, what would that one piece of advice be?
Produce a show right away. The best thing you can do is produce a show. Like my first year of comedy, I should have just found a coffee shop, do an open mic. And it's like it's fast forwards your career. It hyper connects you. Everybody that books a show, you need to book them and get to know them, build those relationships. And it gets you on stage a lot. If you're the host, you're on stage a lot more. And it's really healthy to do that early in your career. Produce a show, get production experience, because then you know what it's like to run the lights. If this show's clean and somebody gets up there and they're dropping F-bombs and it just makes your blood curl, you will never do that. You learn so much by producing a show. You get highly networked quickly. And it also will, by default, teach you how to promote, how to get on Facebook, make flyers, do all the work of comedy, so you'll learn that. And then the number one thing it does is it gets you stage time. And that's really what this is all about. Get as much stage time as you can, as fast as you can. Get on stage. And producing a show will create that opportunity, especially if you're hosting, right? So that would be if you're early in your career, produce a show, find a place, produce a show as quick as you can.
Have you read my book? Is that where you got that from? I have a book about producing comedy shows for fun and profit. That's like
but I'll buy it today. So,
but literally, that's what I did my first year was produce shows. I did a open mic in a coffee shop, and then I produced a monthly show every single month. So I had to learn to promote, learn to book, learn to run the light, learn to host, all this stuff, and it made me a better comedian so much faster. So that's so funny. No one's ever said that, by the way. Besides me, you're the only other person. I feel like we might be brothers, like somehow, like related.
Gotta get coffee sometime.
We totally should, dude. Yeah,
doing this. I feel like we're cut from the same cloth. So
seriously, I'm like, what he's saying all the stuff that I say to people all the time. This is fantastic. So
I love it, man. I love it.
Last thing, where can people find you? Where can they go look up all your stuff, find your books, find your stand-up, find festivals, all that stuff? Where should we direct them to?
Yep. Go to Outliers at MailChimp sites.com. Just go to Facebook, look up Dave Thurston, Instagram, Dave Thurston. And if you just go to Google, Dave Thurston, comedian, Dave Thurston books, like everything comes up. So that's the useful thing. Like you don't really have to be specific anymore. Just go to Google, say, hey, Alexa, buy Dave's book. You don't have to even have a website anymore. So just go to Google, Dave Thurston, comedian, comedy coach. And we'd love to have you out. September 3rd, we'll be at the Neighborhood Comedy Theater for our next student showcase. So September 3rd, Neighborhood Comedy Theater in Mesa, Arizona. Love to have you out for that. But look, everybody, learn as much as you can. Get around comics as much as you can. Write every single day.
That's perfect, dude. I'm going to put all the stuff in the show notes below. You guys, if you love this episode, go leave a review. Go leave a 5-star review. Go write something nice about the podcast. Even go write something you hate. I don't care. If you want to leave a hateful, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Write something and then leave a review. But you can write something mean and then leave a 5-star review. That'd be great. That'd be even funnier. I would laugh so hard. And I'll read it on air. So there we go.
There you go.
Thank you again, Dave. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.